Welcome back to the channel. So if you're watching this and you haven't liked or subscribed, please do that. It helps us more than you know. I'm asking you at the start of the video instead at the end. I'm sure Buzz will jump in and yell at you guys like he has done in previous videos.
Hey, if you're watching this, you're probably one of the 33% that aren't subscribed. What do you think you're doing? Click that button. Get us to 5,000.
Today we're going to be talking about the best or the most important piece of technical advice that you can have as a lifter, and that is the stack. So what are we talking about when we refer to the stack? We're talking about the position of the axial skeleton. So this is the skull, the spine, the rib cage, and although the pelvis isn't part of the axial skeleton, that is included in the stacked position as well. So what are we referring to when we're talking about the stack? We basically mean we want the head, the cranium, stacked directly over the rib cage, over the pelvis, all in a straight line. We don't want to be in a too extended position or a too flex position. So we want to set that position at the start of every single movement. Why would we want to do this when we're looking at training? One, it loads the active tissues, the tissues that we actually want to train. All we're really doing as strength coaches and lifters is either getting stronger or getting bigger. And we use external loads, weights in the gym to do that. We want to make sure that we're actually getting those external loads onto the active and target tissues rather than passive structures like joints and ligaments. So I'm going to use a couple examples here to help you understand this. The first is a prone hamstring curl. So this would be one of those hamstring machines at the gym where you're lying face down. If you do not start in a stacked position, and this means you're in a hyperextended or an extended position, and we have a pelvis that is dumped forward, we're actually putting the hamstrings into an eccentrically orientated position. This means that there is more length through the hamstring, putting them in an unadvantageous position to produce maximal amounts of force. So then what happens? Where do we start producing this force from? We start producing the force from other muscles. We get the erectors taking over and whatnot. And then we also get load dispersing to other parts of the body that aren't the hamstrings. Now I can guarantee you, if you start on the prone hamstring curl in a position of posterior tilt, big exhalation, find that stacked position, maintain that stacked position, and then go through the movement, I can almost guarantee your hamstrings will light up like nothing else, and you'll also need a lot less load to do this because you're actually dispersing the load onto the active tissue rather than other parts of the body. So a big thing to understand with this is that with the hamstrings, they have both distal and proximal attachments. We often forget that the proximal attachments are just as important as the distal attachments. This means that the hamstrings not only flex the knee, but they also posteriorly tilt the pelvis. So if we are in an extended posture and have a pelvis that is anteriorly tilted and dumped forward, we cannot produce maximal concentric force or a concentric contraction with the hamstrings. We need to posteriorly tilt the pelvis as well as flex the knees together. So a really good analogy to use for this is the elevator analogy. In an elevator, if you start on the first floor and you need to go up 10 floors, but the building ends at 10 floors, that's perfect. You can go up your 10 floors. If you're starting on the third floor and you need to go up 10 floors, you either only go up 7 floors or you blow through the roof. So if we use a squat for an example, if we're starting in an unstacked position or an extended posture, we're gonna have a rib cage that is forward and outward and a pelvis that is anteriorly tilted or dumped over. So we're starting in a position of already relative hip flexion. Instead of starting on level 1, we're starting on level 3 or 4 and only have 6 or 7 floors to go up rather than a full 10 floors. If we start in a stacked position, we're opening up the hip flexion capabilities of the femur inside the acetabulum, and now we're starting back on level 1, so we can go a full 10 floors up to the top. Typically, a lot of people will say they have mobility restrictions. A lot of the time, these mobility restrictions can be fixed by simply improving your stacked position, getting the rib cage over the top of the pelvis and exhaling. The second point and why you want to improve your stack and learn how to maintain a stack while going through movement is movement variability. Typically all athletic endeavors and lifting populations are very, very heavily extension based. And this means that they get stuck in this position and are only training these positions. If we learn to maintain a stack, drive a bit more neutrality or flexion through the system, this is great because it starts to open up movement options as a human being. And also following on from the point one, with movement variability, by putting the rib cage in this position, it allows us to create better length tension relationships with the muscle, and we're gonna actually get more bang for buck with our movements and actually get better hypertrophy and better strength gains long term. Third point is the stack is a skill. Learning to maintain the stack while going through movement is a skill, like anything else. It's the same as when you first stepped into the gym and you learned to squat, or learn to do a split squat, or learn to do a bicep curl. You were probably pretty bad at them, and over time, by doing it more and more and more, you got better. It is a skill. We need to teach the brain how to maintain this position, the rib cage over the top of the pelvis, and while going through movement. So we have to practice it. The more you implement it with whether that's low-level core drills such as a dead bug, a plank, a goblet squat, an SSB squat, a trap bar deadlift, a deadlift, the more you practice it, the better you will be at maintaining it while going through movement. So now that we know why we should set a stack when it comes to training and human movement and performance, how do we actually go about setting the stack? So first we need to gain sagittal plane competency over the rib cage and pelvis. And how do we do this? By teaching breathing mechanics. So for us in Bubble Strength Culture, the most basic breathing drill that we use is the 90-90 hip lift. And what this does is a forced exhalation actually helps bring the rib cage. It compresses the rib cage down, brings everything in nice and tight, and draws it in to put the anterior core into a better position to actually hold the rib cage down. We also get a bilateral hamstring contraction, which posteriorly tilts the pelvis, and there we have it, we have our stacked position. So once we learn how to exhale and find this stacked position, we then want to, every time that we're performing a movement, we want to start the movement with a big, long exhale. Typically anywhere from 5 to 8 seconds to draw all the air out and get our rib cage over our pelvis. From there, we want to maintain this position throughout the movement, whether that be a bicep curl or a squat or a leg extension. Literally pretty much every movement that you'll do in the gym. So in summary, just to wrap this video all up, we need the stack to improve or load the active tissues that we actually want to train and get stronger. 2 is movement variability. It gets us away from an extended posture. And 3, we need to practice the stack because it is a skill like every other movement. If you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, happy lifting.